Well, Christmas is approaching, which means I'm busy on the lathe. It's my favorite time of year to use the lathe. I use the lathe occasionally throughout the year, but making gifts for people is really, I think, a great use for the lathe, at least for me. So this was my challenging project this year. This is a piece of mahogany, and it used to be a 2-inch thick piece, and now it's cut down. This is all one, and nothing's been glued or sawn or anything like that. And this is designed to look like it's sort of going right through. This design, so far as I know, originally comes from a guy named Stuart Batty. I will link to the video below where he shows how to do it. The guy's incredible. I've learned more from him than any other woodworker or wood turner, and he has just a really good approach at teaching, and he really jives with me. It's a fairly technical project, and what I like about it, I made it for my dad. My dad is an art guy. He likes abstract art, and that's not who I am. And so this kind of was cool because this is kind of the stuff he likes, and you have to be a good craftsman to make this stuff. So it was kind of like you needed to be the technical guy with the good technique and the sharp tools and the right approach in order to make something really artsy and abstract, which is what he likes. So, yeah. Really nice project. I made one last year and it blew up on me, so this was my second attempt. This piece of mahogany, I don't know if I mentioned that, and I did 3 coats of tung oil on here so that it's kind of nice to touch and not too plasticky. I'm gonna cut to some of the construction details, how I made it, a couple things that went wrong. So if that's interesting to you, keep watching. If not, that's it for the video. But check out Stuart Batty's video below if you want even more detail on how to make it sort of step by step. And ultimately check out his stuff in general for any sort of lathe, wood turning, educational stuff, because he is, in my opinion, the best. All right, hope that's interesting to somebody. If not, give it a thumbs down. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. I hope you're on the lathe doing interesting stuff for people that you love. Take care for now. So I started with a chunk of mahogany here. I had this for a different project. I was going to make some bar stools for our kitchen, but we decided not to. This is about 2 inches thick, and I basically put it on the table saw sled and just did a series of cuts. One thing that's nice about, I already busted some of these out. One thing that's nice about leaving these in place is that as the saw blade turns, basically if the saw blade is turning and half the saw blade is not in wood, you get tons of dust. But if the saw blade cuts and there's wood on each side, it greatly diminishes the dust. It goes into the table saw, and then at the end you can just break these out very easily. Of course it varies on the material, but this is mahogany and that works fine. So, and basically the reason I do this is because when you're turning off center, even with a big heavy lathe like mine, it still just gives you a lot of wobbles, and it's uncomfortable and it's not safe, or let's say it's less safe. So I just cut out all that bulk to this shape for basically convenience and safety. Mounted on the lathe, obviously you want to make sure your corners don't touch. A common mistake here is to measure from the table to the center and cut it short enough, but then you have the length of the corners. And you really want to be careful, because normally when you have something round on the lathe, you can put your hand on it and it won't hit you because it's continuous. But in this case, you have this real nasty thing. Last year I tried to make a bowl like this for my dad. It didn't turn out, and I almost lost a finger. I crushed a finger, I should say, so it was pretty nasty. So a piece of tape here helps remind you once everything is up and spinning. And yeah, like I said, it's a little scary, but that's the technique, and that's what makes it cool. So be careful. All right, so we're done with the lathe work. Now comes the sanding. I cut that on the table, so I gotta fix that. But the last step of the process, if you want a bottom that doesn't look like it's been on a lathe, is to do what's called a jam chuck, where you basically turn a piece of wood that's roughly the outer diameter of the piece of wood is the same as the inner diameter of your bowl. And then I added just little bits of double stick tape for assurance, because the taper of my bowl is not real great for a jam chuck. And I will admit, I'll show these rings are, I had a really hard time cutting this part, in part because normally you would cut sort of like this, but you really can't because everything's in the way. And now that it's so thin and I'm basically done and I have like 5 hours into this, I really don't want to mess it up. So I'm gonna use an orbital sander and sand that. To me, that's a little bit, it's almost like cheating. I mean, I really don't like to have to sand out my tool marks, but this is my second attempt making this type of a bowl, and I really don't have to do it again just to for my pride, basically. So I'm gonna have a bit of sanding to do here, but otherwise I'm happy with the way it came out, and I'll show you a few more pictures of the finished product and with oil.